Good day, viewers. My name is Jeanette Beukes from Kosmos 94.1, and today we will be speaking to Jana Vermeulen, educational psychologist at Be Wellness. Yes, Jana, how are you?
I'm well, thank you. Thanks for having me.
It's lovely to be here with you, especially in your nice studio.
Thank
or
you.
your practice, rather. So
lot.
we're going to jump right into the topic that we have at hand, which is school readiness for, let's say, children then. Can you perhaps just tell us what the term school readiness entails, what the whole thing behind it is?
Sure. So generally it's a bit of a contentious subject because parents are, especially if you're a first-time parent, very anxious because there's a lot of talk around your child's not going to get into a school and they have to do X, Y, and Z.
You have to be on a wait list.
Exactly. And there are only X amount of schools and you need a whole list of things to have been done already prior to going to formal school. So I think it's just changed. The dynamic around going to school has changed, and it just, it incites a lot of anxiety with parents. So school readiness, what it in its most basic form should mean is, should be whether or not your child is ready to go into a formal environment, on a physical level, on a social and emotional level, and on a cognitive level.
Yes.
So it does not necessarily correlate to IQ, it's rather readiness, if you are ready to absorb whatever is going to be thrown your way.
Okay. Can you then perhaps just explain to us what the social and emotional readiness entail and the cognitive readiness?
Sure, yeah. So for me, the social and emotional development is more important than the cognitive readiness, but it's really more related to perceptual skills, which we can talk about just now. But social and emotional development allows you to feel confident enough to take risks, to ask the teacher to go to the bathroom, to take the note to the office, to back yourself when you're feeling unsure, and that then spills into your academic work, how to make friends, how to find your bag if you've lost it. So the social emotional component really does come down to confidence.
Okay.
And a lot of that we can encourage and develop at home. It's not really the work of the school to do that.
Absolutely. And then the cognitive, I assume that includes the reading.
Yes. So school readiness in that regard has changed somewhat because, you know, a few years ago you just wrote your name on an application list and you went to school and you played. Now there are a lot more skills required to manage the expectations and the pace, but it still should not create anxiety because it's the foundational skills that pre-primaries are very well equipped to develop. So it would be things like having good verbal skills, depending on the language of instruction that you're going to enter into, to understand the numbers between 1 and 10, to know your body has two sides and to be able to have a dominance established before then, to know which picture is different, which one is the same, to hold a pencil properly, to be able to jump and skip and roll. So it's impossible to say cognitive skills without including all the other foundational aspects. If your body is ready, then your mind will also be ready. And the other way is also true.
Okay. I'm not a parent yet, but I'm interested to find out when it comes to having your toddler and what is it a good thing to actually start them, let them start reading, show them a bit of stuff here, how to count, obviously, but then isn't that putting a lot more pressure on them at the end of the day?
So I think all parents want their children to excel, and there's quite a competitive nature these days in going to school. Your child has to be able to read before school, and I don't think that that's necessarily true. If you want your child to have the edge over and above other children, there are really just a few basic things that you should be covering, and one of the single biggest predictors of academic success is reading to your child.
Yeah.
So if you as a parent, right from the beginning, even if they not really sitting down and listening to you or lying down and listening to you, you should be reading to them every evening.
Okay.
That will enrich their language development without having to go to extra lessons. So read to your child right from the beginning. Don't give your child a phone. That actually
That's the contentious one as
inhibits
well, eh?
it. Yes. And it just takes away all their creativity. It affects their concentration. So a lot of children will have markers for attention deficit, but if they're spending 2 to 3 hours in front of a screen, that's not a reliable, you can't reliably say there's an attention problem because they've just been sort of overstimulated. So as a parent, what you need to be doing is having conversations with your children, have a meal around a table, put them to bed, read them a story, talk to them if you have very small children, talk to them when they're in the bath. Conversation and spending time with your children, those are the things that you do anyway. So just use that as a precursor to support them going to school. You don't need fancy preschools and educational toys and iPads. Just connect with your child and they'll be okay. But you have to do that consistently. And as a parent, you cannot connect with your phone being the sort of blockage between, because that's a reality. I mean, it's if you walk into any practice or any waiting area, you'll see a child, a tiny child with a phone as a measure to keep them busy. But yeah, you're inhibiting thinking.
Yes.
So that the two biggest tips I would give parents is to connect with your child, and that means having conversations with them, and don't give them a screen or a phone. Watching TV is normal for everybody, but they definitely do not need a tablet or iPhone before they are already in school, and it's required by the school.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, cool. Well, I think we can get back to the phone aspect a little later again, because that's quite an interesting one.
Yeah.
And let's go to, what are the signs that your child is ready to go to school?
So in terms of school readiness, a lot of people will base that on a particular birthday. So if their birth date is early on in the year, let's say the first 7-8 months, then one would assume that they would naturally become ready, given that they've been in a preschool, they've had exposure to the teaching in a preschool, which should be play-based. And the teachers are the best markers for telling them whether, their children are ready or not. But you would see things like they have increased independence. They carry their own bags. They can find their own water bottle. In terms of what the teachers see, they will be able to complete the task independently, fairly independently. They can follow instructions without it having to be repeated. They don't have an emotional resistance or overreaction when they are asked to do something that's a little bit more challenging. Socially, they have formed relationships. Physically, they are well coordinated. They can sit for long enough. They can hold their pencil. They can concentrate for at least 20 to 25 minutes. So those would be the things going forward. If you have a birthday, from September onwards, there's always a question mark about readiness in terms of development, because you've had 9 months less exposure than the other peers in your class. And there I would say earlier is not better. The day you go to school, the day before that would have been the last day that you had practically no responsibilities. So there's no real rush. If you are going to be good at sport, because that's always a deciding factor for parents. They don't want their children to participate with the older children, but essentially they are the same age. But if you're going to be good at sport, or if you are strong academically, that will remain with you, even if you go to school a year later. But that additional year can be regarded as like the gift of time, because emotionally and socially you just a lot more rehearsed and confident. So you're more likely to take a leadership position or take ownership of your schoolwork, because you're more confident, like I said at the beginning. So my advice would always be to take guidance from the teacher, and as parents you need to keep your finger on things to be, and you can only do that by being connected to your child. If there are areas of challenge, it is wonderful if teachers and parents alike can identify them early, so that if you need an intervention like speech therapy or occupational therapy, those things can take place, you know, from ages 4, 5, 6, 7 to really establish a nice base, because those are typically the 2 therapies, and then play therapy for emotional support. If things weren't quite settled yet, those would be the things to do in a therapeutic setting to support skills.
Okay, cool. So also I wanted to find out, when it comes to sending or letting your kids grow up at Oma and Opa, and then after that you send them straight to grade 1, is that a wise decision? Or is that even allowed in this day and age?
Do you mean if they've not grown up with their parents, not been raised in that home?
No, I mean like when during the day, they spend their time at Oma and Opa, that's like the day.
Oh, I see what you mean. Look, it depends on the kind of exposure that they received when they were at Oma and Opa's house. You know, if they were sitting in front of the TV all day, then definitely they will be disadvantaged. In terms of their language development, their number concept development, and social emotional skills, because there's no interaction there. It's not on the same level.
Yeah.
But if they were being sort of exposed to outside play and movement opportunities, and they were encouraged to draw and paint and write, then that's a different story. Most of the schools these days have school readiness assessments, where you go and they establish a baseline to see whether you will cope with the demands of a particular school.
Okay.
And the different schools have different expectations, but there are always baseline things like language skills. You know, if you look at something, can you see it's 5, or do you still have to count all of the numbers? So that means you're not really grasping number concept yet. So I would be careful to do that, and I would rather kind of want to get objective information from a psychologist or an occupational therapist to say, okay, chronologically, there are the gaps, and those are the gaps that need to be closed. So they're not significant. You can probably send them, but you're going to need to do X, Y, and Z in the year that they are in grade 1.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
And you mentioned that parents can take the step of connecting with their children to prepare them. Is there other ways that parents can prepare their children for school?
So in terms of, you know, sitting down with them and doing worksheets and that kind of thing, I would say no.
Okay.
Because it's very abstract. It is teaching something, but it's not founded in the connection that we're looking for, and it's not practical enough. Before school starts formally, you really want to work on on a concrete level. So you want to, if you're doing math and you're making a homemade pizza, you are doing shapes and measuring and estimation and planning, those are math skills. If you are helping to set the table, you are doing math skills as well, number concept, language development. So just parent.
Yeah.
And that will lead you towards readiness. But you can, of course, expose them to programs. You know, you get loads of different movement programs, any kind of sport that's developmentally appropriate. Swimming is always good, tennis, dancing. But if there are financial constraints, nothing's stopping you from going onto YouTube, if you have to go onto YouTube, and putting on HIIT workouts for children or yoga for kiddies, and you do that together. To engage with your child is very important, because you can be driving in a car and it's a teachable opportunity, because you can point out, you can play red car. How many red cars do you see? What's the first number on the number plate? What are the 3 lights of the robot? What do you think that means? So it's language and math all the time. And the biggest challenge that I see is lack of problem solving. So equip your child with problem solving skills by not solving their problems. Let them figure it out. You obviously have to guide them.
Yes.
but let them figure out where their shoes are. Don't find it for them. Let them tie their shoelaces and have the patience to see it through without getting annoyed and just saying, come, let me put it on for you. Because then you're not enabling them to solve problems. You're taking away that opportunity. So the more you can let them sickle or struggle through something, the more problem-solving skills they'll develop and resilience. And if they're resilient, things can be hard in grade 1, but they'll keep going.
Okay, that's very interesting. And then going to, you also mentioned that sending your child too early can be can have negative can have a negative impact on them. Can you just elaborate more on that? What the negative impacts can be, and and the positives as well for sending or preparing your child?
Yeah. So again, that's also a contentious issue because not all children who have birthdays in November aren't school ready. Some children can go to school if they were born, later in the year and they cope. So it really also is informed by your temperament, your personality, and that makes it so much more difficult because you don't know what kind of person this is going to be in the long term. But if you aren't school ready on an emotional, social level, which is usually the big factor when you're much younger, you just sort of don't perform according to your potential because the research doesn't show that there's much of an academic difference. It's called redshirting. If you keep your child back, academically it doesn't make that much of a difference across primary school, grade 1 to 7. They catch up to each other, those that were kept back and then those that go to school on time. But the emotional components often allow children to outperform those that weren't quite ready, just because they have more urgency in their approach, and they're better at problem solving because they've had 11 months more time to problem solve, and they don't second guess themselves as much. They don't need all the affirmation. The teacher doesn't constantly have to say yes, good job, or you're on the right track. They'll just go for it on their own. And usually then around grade 4 you'll see a bit of a dip because the expectations are different. You have more than one teacher, you have many things to juggle, and you're just not quite there.
I see. Okay, cool. But then when it comes to the confidence of the child and he or she notices that my peers are younger than I am, won't that also affect their confidence at some level?
I think that is something that is completely driven by the narrative at home. If parents sort of highlight or are affected by the fact that their child's going to be one of the older children in the class, that's the message that you're sending, that you weren't good enough to go to grade 1 versus you're much younger than the others. It's an unfair disadvantage that you have because somebody that's born in January, if you're a December baby, like I am a December child, and if I go to school in the year that I turn 7, somebody who goes to school the next year and has their birthday in January is only a month older than me, but they're in a different grade. So the expectations of grade 2 are a lot more than the expectations of that grade 1 child, but we're basically the same age. So if you are open and candid with your child in saying, you know what, you have not had enough time, and you can explain it in the sort of the butterfly cycle. You're not ready to break out of the cocoon yet, and if we force the cocoon open, you don't get a special covering on your wings, and that means if any kind of rain or dust falls on you, you collapse. So you want the strongest possible wingspan. And the same thing with sport. My nephew is born in December and my son is born in January, same year. But my nephew went to school the year after my son, and you can just see what a massive difference that made to him. He's just flourishing. Even though they're born in the same year, there's just a big gap in terms of timing. But like I said, there are variables in personality and temperament. And for some children, they do not require the additional time. That's why it's important to know your child, to know your child's teacher, so that you can make an informed, objective decision, not the subjective one that says, oh, all my friends' children are going, mine should go as well. And even to sometimes keep in mind, if your child has an early year birthday and they're also not ready, don't force it. You know, in the bigger scheme of things, no one's going to ask you when you're 23, did you go to school on time or not?
Yeah.
But you're going to have a lot more, I don't know, I just think you're going to have a better school career. You're going to have more positive experiences if you were ready to take it on. It's like me showing up for this podcast unprepared or slightly more prepared. You just feel more at ease.
That's true. So then to end it off, can you just perhaps tell us more about what happens here at Be Wellness, what you do as an educational psychologist?
Sure, yeah. So we are a multi-dimensional practice where we have a general practitioner who specializes in pediatrics or special interest in pediatrics. We have 2 gynecologists, a married couple from Austria, then there's an educational psychologist, Marilise Carlitz, who does similar work to me, but has a special interest in the brain and the body connection, a clinical psychologist,
a psychiatrist.
And then a psychiatrist, and all the names, sorry, I didn't mention all the names, but it's all noted on our website and you can make bookings online. And then in terms of what we do here at the practice, it would include for example, school readiness assessments or IQ testing or career guidance, personality testing. So the psychometry would be the one leg and the other leg would be therapy, psychotherapy for children mostly.
Yeah, absolutely. And any last words to parents to calm their nerves when it comes to sending them to school?
I would pump the brakes on the pressure that parents put on themselves. You cannot get your child ready. It is a thing that will happen spontaneously. So just go back and do the basics, get up earlier and have breakfast around a table with your child. Talk to them when you pick them up and don't be interrupted by a Teams meeting when you're doing that. Have dinner again, let them help you cook on weekends, settle down. We always think I should do X, Y, and Z so that my child is successful, but you simply do not have the capacity to decide or influence whether your child is successful or not. But you can support the progress. So I like to think of it as not trying to be the engineer of their success, but trying to be the shepherd on their way to success, because they'll get there for sure.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Jana, for this informative discussion. Now I know what to do when I have kids.
Yeah, you can start ticking off your boxes.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, viewers, and until next time.